Hi, my name's Cordy and I'm excited to announce the launch of my new app, Lie to Me, which if you've tried everything else, you know, throwing your phone at your partner or, you know, trying to reason with them, I've developed this new app which is based on my own experience of sort of like lying to you at the start of these intros, and you can use this to generate with a QR code which you sort of use the camera and point it at your spouse's face. It will generate a lie that's bespoke and will help to get you out of that situation. So yeah, there's a link in the description below if you want to check that out, obviously. I was travelling in a car to a garden gig for my friend Jules, and I was with David, a colleague and friend, and he's been a Helix user now for about a year. And we got talking about I think the HX Stomp, because he does sort of like theatre gigs and gigs where you're kind of restricted for space, and you know, you might be sat quite near other musicians because they're in a pit, aren't they, essentially. And he was considering the HX Stomp as something for these smaller kind of gigs, and I guess probably be familiar with what a kind of theatre gig entails, but generally you'd be playing electric guitar, potentially also acoustic guitar, and you'd have a mixture of sort of clean tones and dirty tones for most kind of shows. So I've done one of these. I did Jesus Christ Superstar, and for that basically it's kind of pretty similar to your standard function gig in terms of what sounds you need. You know, you're going to need cleans, you're going to take occasional solos, and you need rhythm guitar, you know, like dirty tones or mid-gain tones. So you could see why the Helix and HX Stomp and all that stuff, I think, is used quite heavily in the theatre or whatever it's called, show community, because space is an issue, sound and noise levels are an issue, and also portability. You know, rather than taking an amp, if you can get pretty much there the tone, and if you're working in London for instance, you can just take something small, then that probably wins over an amp for a lot of people. But as I was thinking about it, I was thinking, well, actually probably the Line 6 Pod Go might be better for that job. So this video is mostly about why I think for the gigging musician, a few reasons that the Pod Go might end up being a better choice than the HX Stomp. Obviously HX Stomp has been my favourite Line 6 device by quite a long way for quite a while. I still use it loads, but when it comes to gigging again, I'm thinking that the Pod Go might end up being something I take out a little bit more, perhaps. So, reason number one, I feel like this screen is slightly bigger and slightly more readable. If you've got rubbish eyes like me, when it actually comes to the gig, this screen doesn't really do much of a job. So, for instance, when I've occasionally pressed these two buttons, I run in snapshot mode by the way, these two buttons together, or these two, the screen changes and it goes to switch between presets, and that throws me into a bit of a panic because I can't really see what's going on, so I have to sort of get back down and sort things out. So screen size, the screen of the Pod Go is, I don't know, 3 or 4 times the size of the HX Stomp, so chances are you may see things a little bit better. It's just my thinking. Another thing that I think makes the Pod Go a little bit more giggable than the HX Stomp, and we talked about it before, but to have a tuner which is always there and a tap tempo which is always there alongside your snapshot is kind of, for me, one of the things that was slightly irritating about the HX Stomp when I came to gigging live with it. Basically, as I said, I run in snapshot mode, so I've got a clean on the right hand side here, sorry. In the middle, I've got a solo tone, and then I have a rhythm tone for snapshot A. That's how I gig. That, if you're running in snapshot mode, leaves you no opportunity to have a tap tuner button unless you also take a momentary, or latching switch, which you plug into expression outputs. But then that also means you can't have an expression pedal, so it's sort of like an either or proposition, and then also that ends up making what you have to take, slightly more. So you'd have to basically just crouch down, press the view. I can't remember actually. Crouch down, maybe press view, and maybe press page across to get into a different mode, then tune, and then switch back to snapshot mode. So that's the process for tuning. On a gig, I like to tune quite a lot between songs just to make sure that basically I can sound as good as I can. Playing an out-of-tune guitar sounds pretty rubbish to me. And tuning issues just happen as it happens. But so to have that on this screen, I think is great. And you've also got this pedal mode. So, if you press mode, I've got it set up to be in snapshot mode in general. So I've got these 4 switches controlling my main sounds. And then when you press mode, if you wanted to, you could then go in and switch pedals. So the Pod Go is kind of a lot more of a giggable interface, if you like, and you've also got that extra snapshot, which is kind of a big deal. One of the other things that you are going to end up needing on some gigs, typically with the HX Stomp, if there's a wah part, I just don't use the wah, because on a gig it's switching between lots of presets and stuff. On the Pod Go, the wah is always there, ready for you in the presets, so when that happens, you just switch on the wah and then you're ready to go. And then also you've got that volume pedal that's always there, and again, something that if you wanted to do that with the HX Stomp, you'd have to take an expression pedal, which is just an extra thing to carry. So if you're worried about space and also your floor footprint, I guess that would be another reason that the Pod Go might be useful. In terms of overall size, I'd say the Pod Go is about 4 times bigger than the HX Stomp. Weight wise, they're pretty similar. Weight wise, obviously the Pod Go is a bit heavier, but yeah, it's not heavy at all by any means. So we said about there being that tuner, that's not always available if you're in snapshot mode with the HX Stomp. Also, when you're gigging, I think tap tempo can be one of those things that you do need to use quite a lot if you are a person who uses tap tempos. So for instance, I went into the studio relatively recently and I took an FM3 for that, the Fractal Audio FM3, because it was just going into the loop of an amp. But I was using the tap tempo for that on every song just to bring those delays within the tempo of the tune that we were playing. And likewise, if you're on a gig, that sort of thing can be, super useful. If you're playing like a U2 tune, you'd want that delay to be in sync. And so, again, that's one of those features on the Pod Go which, although it's not, doesn't seem like a massive thing, when it comes to actually gigging, I think it's something that I'm really gonna want. So I think all of those things added together, the 4 snapshots, the tap tuner, the expression pedal, and the pedal board mode, being able to switch in and out of that. I think all of those things added together are going to be the reason that if I ever do get back to gigging, the Pod Go, I think, is going to be what I take over the HX Stomp. I think most of the time, just because the actual sounds themselves are pretty much the same as what I'll be using on the HX Stomp. The only thing that I can't do that I'll miss will be things like dual cabs, and potentially parallel lines, but that's not a huge deal breaker for me, because you can get decent tones out of a single cab, and you know, typically on a gig where you're going straight to front of house, you're not in complete control of what comes back to you anyway. So, you know, will I even notice that there's not a dual cab? Potentially not. So those are my thoughts on the Pod Go. I've been going through and creating some of my kind of favourite HX Stomp presets anyway, and I think all of those things put together kind of knock the HX Stomp off of my top spot for like the gig where I just have to show up and go direct. You know, the gig where I might potentially need a wah pedal for a couple of songs, the gig where I want to be able to sync up with the drummer, my delays and stuff. I just think the Line 6 Pod Go ends up winning in most of those circumstances. Hopefully that's vaguely useful, and you know, if you were considering the HX Stomp, maybe the Pod Go might also be something you want to consider. I think it's slightly cheaper now, can do most of the same things and a little bit of other stuff that the HX Stomp can't do. Obviously you don't have the MIDI ins that the HX Stomp has if you're a MIDI person, and also slightly less parallel routing options, but then you also have an expression pedal and 4 snapshots and extra switches, so it's kind of a give and take. But yeah, if you like the sound of any of what I've been playing, presets and all that for my Helix stuff and Pod Go in the description, you can grab them if you want, and yeah, hopefully this was interesting. I'll catch you for another video soon.